Hello, and welcome to the Career Change Diaries podcast with me, Alice Stapleton. And today I'm delighted to welcome James Lewindon. Hi, James, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Delighted to be with you today.
Oh, well, I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast. So, James and we didn't work together. I haven't coached him or anything. He was actually someone that I came across through my husband when they did a legal event together, and we got to talking about careers and all that sort of thing. And then worked out that he had a very interesting career for himself. So, yeah, looking forward to getting into it and learning a bit more about what perhaps is known as a squiggly career. So I coach a lot of people about having a kind of medium to long term action plan, a real sort of focus on what they want to do and how to get there. I think when we were chatting, it sounded like yours has been a bit more of a organic approach. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to hear more about that side of things. So looking at James's LinkedIn profile, I think the highlights started as a history teacher way back when, 1999. You can fact check me, James. And now head of client development for Pinsent Masons Vario. Is that how
Mhm.
you say it's
Yeah,
Vario? Okay.
yeah.
So where to start? Where to start? I mean, it's got to be history teacher, right? So tell me how you ended up starting there.
I think I started as a history teacher more because I really enjoyed doing history at university and had I didn't have a career plan. I'd done history at A level, really enjoyed it. Thought, oh, I'll do history at university, and then kind of got to my third year of uni, and then started to talk to friends about their plans for what their careers and realized I just didn't have a plan. And at that time, I was too late to do for the apply for any graduate schemes. And I said, sorry, you'd be good as a teacher. And before I knew it, I thought, oh yeah, maybe that would be a good idea. And I'd enrolled in it as a teacher training, and enjoyed the teaching aspect. And my first job was in a really good school in Cardiff, and was suddenly in a job before I knew that I was almost in a job, that I kind of was doing something that I hadn't
Uh,
actually planned to be. I hadn't had a long-term career. I was like, this is what I want to be, a teacher. I hadn't had like some people have a calling or a vocation to do that. I hadn't. I just thought, oh, is this what I am now? Is this my career? But I don't get me wrong, I loved the teaching aspect, but it was after a few months I kind of thought, is this me now? And there was that kind of feeling of, I don't know if I've made the right decision or not, but everyone tells me this is a great career. I've got a great career track. So yeah, I started as a history teacher in secondary school, less by design and more almost that I was good at it, but I didn't know if I'd made the choice to be in that
yeah.
role for long term.
What was it that people saw in you that made them say that you would be a good teacher, do you think?
I'm quite, but I think quite personable. I'm quite, I like storytelling. I like the kind of um, seeing others succeed. That's always been something like from playing sport. Kind of even at university, I was helping coaching in sport. So I liked that aspect of the teaching side. And there was something that was good fun about history because it's storytelling, and it's great. And I think those aspects combined, people say, "Oh, you make a good teacher." I think potentially also there wasn't many other options, and people thought, well, if you're a history teacher, for them default were, if you're a did history for the default was, well, you'll be a history teacher, because the career track for history graduates was either doing more history as PhD or masters, or
Hmm.
history teacher.
You're
So
teaching it.
yeah,
Yeah.
their definition of what a career looked like was probably the same as mine, because I didn't have any other knowledge of what that looked like.
Yeah. Well, and how long was the PGCE? Is that a year?
Yeah, about a year.
Mm.
And I enjoyed that, and I learned a lot about myself because it was terrifying. Standing up in front of a class for the first
Oh, I
time was
can
terrifying.
imagine. Yeah.
And my teacher, the first school I was placed at was a school called Lewis Boys School up in Ystrad in the valleys of Wales, and it was a boys' school, and I would have been 21, and I was teaching 18-year-old like
No,
rugby
so not
lads.
even that much older.
No,
No,
uh,
gosh.
so I was trying to teach these hulking Great Valleys rugby lads about the spinning jenny and the Industrial Revolution. I thought, what am I doing here? But it was a real test of resilience. And um, a teacher had said to me, if you can teach here, you can teach anywhere. And I had to learn presentation skills and time management skills, and how you defined what good looked like in a very short space of time, in terms of, I've got these kids for 45 minutes. How do I impart knowledge, control behavior, get them thinking that history might be a good thing to study, and also not completely lose my mind because I'm terrified? And that happened every hour almost.
Which is a lot for a 21-year-old to go through all of that, for sure. So you said after about 3 months, it started to dawn on you that, oh, okay, this is now my career. So tell me a little bit about some of those thoughts.
I think the initial rush, I was in a good school. People were saying, "Oh, you're in a great school. This is a career for life." And I could feel um, the expectation of, like, this is you now. And the thing that still sticks with me was going into the staff room, and after 3 months, I started to see that the teachers all sat in the same place. They all sat in the same chairs, and these are teachers who've been teaching at school for 20 years, and they complained about the same things, and they complained about the same
Oh, your life
challenges.
flashed before your eyes.
I was like,
Oh.
this. I could see. I thought, this is going to be me in 20 years' time. I will be sat in that chair complaining about the same stuff, and there'll be a new uh, teacher coming in, and that'll be me. And I just thought, hang on a minute. I've been to school, to university, to do then the PGC, and I'm back in school, and I'm trying to teach these kids about history, and I've got no life experience whatsoever. My entire life has been in a classroom. How can I? There must be more than this. And I thought, I don't know if I want to be a teacher. I can't be a teacher that's been in the same school, sat in the same chair, doing the same thing for the next 30, 40 years, however long it is. And I've got no life experience whatsoever. I've got not experienced anything to actually give context or meaning to being a teacher. So even if I quit teaching, I need to have life experience. Even if I want to continue teaching, I need to have life experience. And that became the
Mm.
kind of the driver. I need to have something more about me.
So it sounds like at that point you were perhaps thinking that you might come back to it once you had some other sort of experience.
Yeah, mostly because I just didn't have any idea what else to do. And I mean, the thing that I thought was, I just need to go traveling. I just need to almost completely
Mm.
separate myself from what my career is, like literally have no plan. And it was terrifying. And a lot of people saying, what are you doing?
So
You're,
that is what you did, was it?
yeah, I
Yeah.
quit. I just quit.
So after how long?
A year. So I did my
So you
first
kept
year,
going for a year, right?
because you're on a long-term kind of
Oh,
contract.
of
You
course,
can't just
yeah,
like
yeah.
say, right, here's my 2 weeks notice, because they just can't have teachers quitting, halfway through a term. So I said, look, I'm not continuing. The school wanted me to stay. Friends and family were like, you've just spent a year learning how to be a teacher, and now you're quitting. But I just thought, I have to get. There was this part of me as, I have to get away from this environment, because I haven't got any perspective to know, actually, what do I want to do as a career? I haven't really thought about it, and I don't know what my skills are. I've got no life experience, so the only way for me to compute doing that was just to escape completely.
Okay. No half measures.
No,
Bang. No,
yeah,
I can relate to that. I mean, my first career as a probation officer, I spent, God, yeah, 2 years training,
Mm.
qualify for 6 months. And I was like, nope. I was like, I've just spent 2 years trying to get to this point. And 6 months in, yeah, it was a similar thing. I just remember thinking, I don't want to do this forever. And it's
It's
just sort of,
scary as well, isn't it?
yeah, well, and it's a bit disappointing. I don't know
Mm.
if you felt that. I was a bit like, oh, but similar to what you were saying, it was just, I've got to get out of here. I'm sure a therapist might have a field day on my escapism tactics. But yeah, it was just a sort of, I can't do this anymore.
Mm.
Okay, so you decided the next step was just go traveling, clear your
Yeah,
head a little bit.
and I did. I went traveling, and then when I came back, I knew that I didn't want to be a teacher, but I didn't have any mechanism to know what else I wanted to be. And it was easy for me. I'd flatlined money. I hadn't got any money. I thought like the quickest way for me to be able to have money, um, not move back in with my parents, was to go supply teaching. So that's what I did. I just went supply teaching
Okay.
just to try and give me a bit of breathing space where I could, work for a couple of weeks, and then if I wanted a few days off to try and, look at what else I wanted to do, I could do that. So almost supply teaching was being a consultant to try and figure out what's next.
Mm.
And that's when I started again, just thinking I'll just do something that gets me more into a commercial type role, because that's what all my friends were doing. They were going into kind of more commercial sales or accounting or marketing or business development and things. So there was a role that came up in a South Wales newspaper that was working on education kind of topics, but managing their um, education outreach, working with schools. It was called the Newspapers in Education Initiative, which was like a remit across all the media newspapers to engage back more in schools and with learning and things. So that was what my role was there.
Okay. And I suppose there was credibility there because obviously you'd worked in education, you're a teacher. So how long did you do that role for?
I think about a year and a half, 2 years,
Okay.
and then went to there was a job that came up with the Welsh Development Agency at the time, and then it became the part of the Welsh government, which was again working in schools, but more a project management of getting business owners, so entrepreneurs, to go into schools to talk about career development and skills development and uh, kind of how to think about becoming an entrepreneur in Welsh schools. So it was again education related, but a lot more on um, project managing a whole entire Wales wide education project and working with small business owners and working with entrepreneurs. So it was more managing projects and managing spending uh, government money and public money and commercial money to do so. The thread of education was still there, but it was then actually almost working with entrepreneurs in how do you go into schools, how do you talk about your skills, how do kids learn about becoming more entrepreneurial, etc., etc.
Mm. And I suppose had you picked up that project management skill set in the newspaper's role, or did you have to be a bit creative about your
I think,
transferable skills?
yeah. So I hadn't had a huge amount of project management experience. I think I was hired because I knew how schools operated within the environment that they were trying to get external speakers in, and the kind of skills agenda within Wales. So from a teaching side, I was really good at that, which they didn't have. What they did have was good project management training and tools and things. And they said, look, well, the teaching, we'll stick you on a Prince 2
Oh,
project
great.
management course.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how we manage our projects. So we'll stick you through that. You bring the teaching side, you'll learn the project management side. So yeah, kind of I got in through the teaching route, that
Yeah.
experience than the project management side.
Well, that's often quite a good route to explore when you're looking to change career. You don't always have to obviously go into something completely new. It can be that sidestep using your industry knowledge, which I suppose is what you did there. And was that simply a role that you came across at the time and you thought, oh, that sounds like a good next step, or do you remember?
Yeah, I think it was. I remember being at the newspaper, and already I could see the challenge that was happening. That newspapers were starting to lose money, uh, readership was going down, and I was actually made redundant from that role.
Oh, okay.
So I I got to get another job. So I was made redundant. It was a horrible experience because they were making cuts across the newspaper. They called everyone into the office across the team that kind of I was in the marketing and community outreach team. They called everyone into the office and they said, we're making cuts across the newspaper. I'm going to read out a list of names of people who unfortunately will be made redundant from the team. And they
In
and
front
she
of
just in front
everybody.
of it. So we were all in a
Oh
room. So we're
no.
all in a room. And I remember, I can't remember her name, but I remember her standing. She just went, James Lewindon. And then she closed. And I remember that everyone sidled out of the room, just kind of looking at me, and I was just there, shocked, like shocked. And she said, "We'll give you 3 months pay, but yeah, you're the only one who's being made redundant from this team." And that was it. I packed up my stuff and gone. So I had 3 months to find a job, but it was more out of necessity. It wasn't a, oh, if this is an opportunity for me, this is, I just need to get another job. And it came up
Mm,
on the Welsh Assembly website, and I that's, that was the driver to get me into that role, was necessity.
right. Right. And did that impact you in any other way? I mean, lots of people can experience redundancy in
Um,
several ways.
yeah, I honestly thought I'd have to go back to teaching
Oh,
because I thought,
really?
yeah, I really thought, oh, do you know what? I've tried to escape teaching, but been made redundant from the first role that I've had outside of teaching, and maybe I'm just not cut out for anything else. Um, and I did think, well, actually going back into teaching, but the real challenge was the school that I'd had worked at. They'd replaced me. The other schools that I thought, oh, I might want to work there, and didn't have any opening. So the only jobs that were available at that time back in teaching were quite, there'll be a long drive away, or they were at a junior kind of level and didn't have any career. And I thought I'd go back to teaching and be in a worse place teaching than if I'd
Yeah.
stayed where I was. So um, thankfully, the role came up, and I was able to use the teaching side. But I was looking at anything and everything
Mm.
to try and
It's funny
survive.
to think though, like if I don't know if there had been a vacancy and you had, I mean, it sounds like you were just, oh, I just need anything. The career that you now have might have looked completely. You may have gone back to teaching, and
I might be one
who
of those teachers
knows?
sat in
Yeah, sat in the same
the.
chair complaining. Yeah, yeah.
um,
Oh,
I
well,
knew I
yeah.
knew
Funny how things work out.
I knew I didn't want to go back, so I always thought I need to exhaust everything else before I go back to that. Uh, before I thought I can't resign myself to teaching because it's unfair on myself and it's unfair on the kids and it's unfair on the school. So
Mm,
I'll explore everything else. Um, and yeah, the role with the Welsh Assembly came up.
okay. So you take that role. And then did you start to step into the legal industry in the role after that then? How did you, because you've really carved out a career within the legal sector. So was that
That was the one after. So
that was the one after, right?
yeah, so the next one was working for a Techniquest, which is a science centre. So it was a big science centre in Cardiff, but it also had a massive workshop where it managed and built museum exhibits and science centre exhibits for global clients. So into
Mm.
China and the Middle East and things. So I was head of projects there. So again, education related, although I had no idea about science. I was a history teacher, but I was, schools, um, project management experience. Um, and so I found myself managing, I had a team of electricians, carpenters, painters, designers. I was managing them, producing exhibits for science centres around the world. Um, Loved the job, really enjoyed it, but I was at the most senior I was ever going to get in the organisation, and I had that. I can't be here forever. I need to find something else. Um,
I'm spotting a pattern, James.
um, I think there is. I can see, we're preparing for this and thinking about it. I was like, I get. It's not that I get bored easily. I think it's if I can't see a route, if I can't see how am I going to grow and develop and
Mm.
how am I going to, is there something that's not just you doing this job for the next 20 years and it's going to be the same and there might be slight variances, but it's essentially the same job. And I hit that with TechniQuest. Even though I loved it, I just thought I can't do this. I
Mm.
can't see myself developing. And again, people are like, "Oh, it's a great job. You get flexibility. You can travel." I just thought I didn't feel it here. I thought I'm not going to get what I want here in terms of am I growing and challenging myself and finding, am I nervous in a good way? Am I expanding how I think about my own career, about myself, and challenging myself? And yeah, a headhunter put me in touch with a law firm, Evershed Sutherland, which had just launched a consulting practice. And it was looking to bring people in who had worked in project management, who had worked with different countries, which I'd done at TechniQuest, to work in the legal industry, telling big legal in-house teams, how to manage their teams more effectively. So, how do legal teams um, use technology or develop their staff or work with the business better. I remember at the interview, they just one of the questions was like, "You've got no legal experience, and you've never worked in a law firm, and you've never been a consultant. So what is it about you? What is it
Why are you here?
about?" Yeah, I was like,
How did you get through the door?
we need to speak to our HR team because why?
Who is that headhunter?
Yeah. um,
Very creative vision.
I think so, but I just said, look, actually, my entire career, if you look back at working with school kids and then working with newspapers and in the science centre, I said basically I work with people to solve problems. That's kind of what I think I do. That's kind of what I think I do. And
Mm.
if you look at all the things that I've done, the only career I've been trained in is to be a teacher. Everything else I've adapted and learned and kind of either learned on the job or I paid for myself to go through to do an MBA to learn how to be better and more commercial in how I was like approaching things. So I said, you can stick me in front of anybody, and I think I've got the skills to be able to listen to them, understand their problem, and probably work out how to help them. And I think they were probably desperate because they needed someone in Cardiff. I was okay with the lower pay that they were offering because I was like, this gets me into a big global law firm, and
Yeah.
I got in, and I mean, I couldn't believe it, but yeah, I got the job, and suddenly I was working in a law firm with no experience whatsoever, and had the biggest imposter syndrome that I, I just thought they're going to find me out here. This is the job where someone goes, "What the hell is this guy doing in our offices?" Although I'd had it before, I really felt it when I joined Evershed.
So, what did you do about that? I mean, or is it just because I mean, I've got this theory that we all feel like imposters, that we all feel like we don't know what we're doing. But yeah, I mean, is that something you've been able to manage at all, or has it got better over time? Or
Yeah, it's definitely got better. I think I've actually recognised you're exactly right. I think everyone has it, but facing it and just going, okay, how do I know that I'm good enough to be here? And how do I reassure myself that I'm good enough to be here? But also, what is it about me being here that gives me, like, makes me feel like an imposter syndrome? And how do I use that as not an advantage, but how do I use it? Not just be beaten by it, but use it
Mm, mm,
as a way of thinking about what value I bring. And when I joined, when I first came into Eversheds, I started working on consulting projects. I just was very open about I'm new to this, very, very conscious about asking questions and not assuming and hoping that I was doing the right thing. So I'd say, I don't know how to do this. Can you show me how to do it? Copious amounts of notes, um, asking people for feedback at the end of every project. What have I done well? What haven't I done well? What would you like to see in the next project? And then working with a colleague, Rich Hill, who I learned a lot from in how to operate within a law firm, and just relying on people, I think, and not being afraid to
mm.
say I need help, and not seeing that as a weakness, but seeing that as a strength in someone who is able to look at their career and say, I want to be better. Can you help me be better? And if you do, I'll be better for you. And that using the imposter syndrome, I think.
Yeah. And what did you find the response was to the people that you were asking, and from the people that you were asking for help? Were they generally
It,
positive? Or?
Yeah, I think because it was also a new way, that it was a new team, it was a new kind of structure in what they were trying to build. So they were trying to they tried to bring people in who had different viewpoints. So that I was an ex-teacher, Rich was from IT background, we had people from compliance and project management. So you had a mix of people in a small team from very different backgrounds. So you couldn't say that one person was an expert in everything. It was actually, I brought things that others didn't have,
Mm, mm,
and I think the team gelled because I would ask for help, but also people would ask for help from me in terms of some of the project management or some of the kind of the ways of working and being in front of clients. Um,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's a great way of looking at it, especially for maybe someone who's changing career. I know a lot of people they get off, they sort of shy away from applying for roles if they think, oh well, I don't have that experience or whatever. But actually, if you think, well, I do have quite a lot of knowledge in the industry or different industries that they could bring to that role, as you say, to bring diversity to the team, and that might actually be what the company's looking for, especially as you said, it was a sort of new, it's a new department of some sort or new part of the business. So yeah, it's a useful reminder for sure. And with, just to go back a little bit, with the headhunter, had you expressed an interest in the legal industry, or was it just that that's what they suggested and you thought actually that does sound quite interesting?
yeah, it was the latter. It was that she knew I wanted to leave TechniQuest, but not for anything. And she had been asked by Eversheds to find people who had worked in consulting or project management experience, who had some international experience. And at that time within Cardiff, I don't think there were a huge amount of people who had that
Mm,
kind of that experience level. Um, and I think so. While it was a bit of a sideways, well, hang on a minute, he works in a science centre. What on earth has he got to do with um, the legal industry? I think they could see a thread. It was actually, can you stand up in front of people, talk to people, get in a room and ask the right kind of questions from a project management experience level. Um, and I think those were the core concepts rather than a very it wasn't a very defined job description. So there was a nervousness on their part, and I think a nervousness on my part about what my job was actually going to be, because they couldn't define it, and I couldn't define how I was going to work with it. But I had the attributes to that they were looking for.
okay. Well, yeah, well, obviously worked out for sure. Um, so so how long? How long were you in that role before you you got your itchy feet again?
So I was at Eversheds there for 12 years. That was the longest time I was at
Ah,
Evershed.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and that was within that 12 years, I worked with we worked with a colleague Richard. We launched a new interim resourcing legal platform for the UK. It's the first UK law firm to launch one fully, and so that was almost starting like a mini business within a big business and growing it hugely. So that was why I stuck at it for 12 years because I could,
So lots of different things to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, huge amount of change and learning and growing from a team of just me and him to, well, we had a team, big UK team out in Hong Kong, Singapore. We launched different products, so there was just constant. Every year was a new thing we were doing. But after 12 years, I got to another kind of like, oh, I really enjoyed the job. I love the team. I love working with who I'm working with. Um, but I'd hit a glass ceiling within the law firm structure. And again, I was like, oh, I can't do it. Is there something more?
And is that quite common in law firms? Do you get to a point where if you're not legally qualified, there's some sort of ceiling, or was it more to do with the sort of operational side of it, or
I think it is. It is still common in law firms where if you're not qualified, then you can only go so far within the remuneration and the promotion um, structure. That is changing, and law firms are starting to recognise that business professionals who are not lawyers can bring and add just as much value as a qualified lawyer can, and that's still a barrier, but it is changing.
hmm.
Um, but that's a difficult one to navigate for people who are coming into the law firm environment, and you may start to think, actually, I can only go so far because I didn't go to law school 25 years. I was a history teacher. I did a PGC. I didn't do a law degree. Um, yeah, so there was a kind of a barrier, and I thought I'd need to go
Yeah.
sideways to get out of that barrier side.
Right. Did you ever think of training to be a lawyer?
Uh, that's a good question. Sometimes I thought, you know what, and sounds really, um, I don't know how to say it. I thought, you know what, if I went back and trained as a lawyer, I could probably train as a lawyer, and within 3 years, I'd be making more money than I am now if I went back and trained as a lawyer, and that
What,
so part of it,
as a junior lawyer, you mean?
yeah.
I
I mean,
know,
just
God, the pay is crazy, isn't it?
and that was the thing I thought, "God, that's that kind of side of things, and it changed. There was a lot of the firm did start to recognise the value that like me and others that were non-lawyers in the team were bringing. Um, but I thought, no, part of the thing of what I was really loving doing was almost the same as back at teaching. I was loving building a team. I was loving seeing others' careers develop, both within my team. I was loving building something. That was kind of Techniquest. Every day was we were building something. So there was lots of the job had lots of elements of I was project managing, I was building team, I was helping others kind of achieving their careers, I was creating something, and that was a thread that I thought, oh, no, I like this space in where I am now.
Yeah. Well, that's what's quite interesting about your career and maybe slightly more organic careers. It sounds like there are kind of key themes, key skill sets that you obviously really enjoy, and you've managed to weave them into the path so far. Because if you had to look at your job titles, it's been what, project management, head of projects. I think there was a interim CEO in there somewhere. What other job
Yeah, so
titles? People and development or something.
yeah, so at Eversheds, I came in as a management consultant. Then
Oh
I
yeah.
was then because I was started that kind of Eversheds Agile, it was head of people and development, which was basically my role, so there was two of us, myself and Rich. My role was kind of how do we get the people and how do we sell them to clients. That was essentially it. And so head of people and development, then head of Agile UK. So I ran the kind of the UK team, and then partner equivalent. So head of Connect, Agile became Connexo, the umbrella kind of alternative legal services. I then moved to an interim CEO role with a place called Flex Legal, and now I'm at Pinsent Masons Vario, where I am head of client development UK. So my role
Mm.
is helping Pinsent Masons and the Vario ALSP understand, think, and engage with how it talks to and provides services to clients.
So it just makes me think we don't always have to get too hung up on the job title almost. It sounds like, again, it's been about what you enjoy doing, and the job titles are sort of byproduct of that almost.
Yeah, I think that's part of the challenge was what am I gunning for? And as I've learned, the more I've experienced I've become in my career, it was like, what is it that actually is important to you? And what are you chasing? Like, what is the thing that you're chasing? And it used to be, I thought, right, if I was going to be a teacher, I want to be a chief exec. Well, I did that, but actually, that wasn't the role that I thought it was going to be. And the things that I really value is do I see a runway where I can be creative, work with great people, and have an unknown future that I can help shape for myself almost. And my wife will say this, I don't like having my career told to me. I like having a structure where I can think I can build my career here. And I feel that in
Mm.
Vincent's. I don't know what that might look like, and I don't know what the job title is going to be, and I don't know what the structure is going to be, but that means I can help shape what that looks like. And that's why I think I stayed so long at Eversheds was I had no idea what my job was going to be in 2 years' time, nor did they. And that was all right. And with Vario
Mm.
here, they're quite open in saying we kind of have an idea of what it might look like, but we can't tell you this is how your career is going to be. And I'm completely fine with that because that gives me space to experiment and try and be challenged. And it's for some people that's terrifying. And for a lawyer, particularly, one of the things that I'm talking to a lot of lawyers now is they have their careers defined for them, and then they get to a certain point and they think, well, what's next? Like, how do I think for myself about what my career looks like? Because you're a trainee, NQ, associate, senior associate, managing associate, salaried partner, equity partner, or the same kind of structure within an in-house legal team. And
Mm.
I'm just like, well, I've got no idea what my career will be in 2 years' time, and that's great because that's exciting. Whereas for other
Yeah.
people who haven't had that squiggly career, it's absolutely terrifying not knowing what that's going to be.
It's just so interesting how we can be so different, as you say. Some people just really thrive in having that certainty and having that plan and that path out in front of them. But yeah, for you, you saw those teachers, same chair, same issues. I suppose that's some sort of certainty and path, isn't it? Whereas, yeah,
Hmm.
for you, you're like, good God, no. To fear of Groundhog Day almost, and the over routine and the over, if that's not even good English, is it? To be over planned, I suppose. So, I mean, it sounds very entrepreneurial, almost like you thrive in a quite an entrepreneurial space, but that's not something you've ever thought
It's
about.
it's a really interesting question because I think within the the space that I've operated, I have wanted certainty of security is probably the better word. So security, and for me, starting my own business or running my own business, there's been a few occasions I thought, oh, I might give that a go. But I'm actually quite a risk averse person in a in that kind of respect, because there's how do I make sure that I'm providing security for family, for the kind of the future, the kids,
Hmm. Hmm.
etc. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, I couldn't risk becoming being an entrepreneur and it failing and me putting that at risk. So there's still part of me that having um, security means a huge amount to me. Um, with the uncertainty of I want to be in a secure place that's uncertain, because actually that's the best of both worlds for me, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've mastered that balance, and funnily enough, it does come up with clients exactly that. They're quite creative, entrepreneurial. They want, yeah, the space to, as you say, carve out their own role and not really know what the next project is and that sort of thing. But yeah, similar to you, they have a value around security and a sort of container of sorts.
Mm,
And so we end up discussing, yeah, a similar setup where perhaps there's an established business, but it's growing a new venture or new market or product or whatever. So then as you've done, you sort of get the best of both worlds. Um, so so how long have you been in the current role?
6 months now. So
Okay, so
yeah,
it's all quite fresh.
passed my probation, thank goodness.
Yay! That's always helpful, isn't it? So it sounds like you can see that yes, there's potential in this company to spend a lot of time doing lots of different things.
Yeah, and I think part of the discussions with them. So I've known the team for a long time. They set up around 2 years after we'd set up the Eversheds kind of similar venture. So I've known them for a long time. And a lot of the discussions that I was having with them, it took probably about 9 months to a year to actually make the role. It wasn't they advertised a role, I applied for the role, I interviewed alongside 10 other people. It was an
Oh,
ongoing
interesting.
discussion of actually what does this look like and how does this work and could we work together, and if we did work together, what could I bring to them, what did they need. And it was almost at that point where they were able to say, actually, well, this is the kind of role and we might have other people that are interested in it, but apply for it and go through that process. And I think it wasn't about I was looking for jobs and this one popped up and I thought, oh, that looks interesting. It was going to my network, going to people I know, and having conversations with them about this is my skill set. I am looking to move, but I want to move for the right kind of thing. What opportunities would there be if we did start to work together, and what would that look like?
Mm. And were there any concerns there? Because I've certainly heard people, they get a bit worried about telling that first person in their network, oh, actually, I'm looking to move on, and they think, it's going to be like Chinese whispers, and suddenly everyone's going to know, and then you're going to be dumped out the door. Yeah, were you concerned that it would get around or impact anything, or
Um,
not really?
no. I think it was more. I kind of framed it in a. I am looking for something else. I was in the place where I'd been interim CEO. There's a lots of change in Flex Legal, and I was like, this isn't the role that I thought it was going to be. And I was open with people saying, look, I am looking for something. I'd really like your advice about having worked with me or talked with me or been a client or been a colleague. What do you think you could see in me that could either
Mm-hmm.
work here or could work elsewhere? So it wasn't I never went into it going, I'm going to speak to that person and hope they give me a job. It was, how can I speak to people to learn more about my skills, learn more about what potentially I might be lacking that I need to make up for if I was going to have a job with them? And also, how do I make sure that I am using my network in a positive way, in the same way that I've helped lots of other people in the same route. I've always been, throughout my career, especially the last kind of 12 years, I've been very focused on helping people get their job, not for money, just get stuff. And I thought, well, I could rely on that network now because they've relied on me. So it was kind of, it wasn't,
Mm.
I didn't feel that I was taking advantage of anybody by asking those questions.
Yeah, well, it's a great attitude, and yeah, as you say, you've sort of been involved in those transitions and career development yourself, so you kind of know how it all works in a way. How did you move on from Eversheds to Flex Legal? Was that a similar conversation approach, or was that a role that you saw? Or
That was a headhunter
mm,
who came to me because I'd had a kind of reputation in the market around building a legal resourcing platform. Um, and yeah, so it was a headhunter, and then I knew Flex Legal, and at the time it was coming to this new startup kind of scale up business that was established with had a great reputation. Um, Wanted someone who was going to come in and kind of scale and add more services, so almost do what I did at Connexo and Eversheds, but with this smaller company and grow the same thing.
mm,
It just so happened that when I joined, um, timing wise, it coincided with another law firm wanting to buy the Flex Legal. So rather than me go in and scale it, it was actually, well, we don't need to do that anymore because we've brought
I
in a law
see.
firm. So
Yeah.
the role that I was going for and got actually turned out to be very different because it wasn't looking to scale and service the in the same way because it was bought by the law firm. And great organization, lovely people, but I just thought, hang on a minute, I've come from one law firm and now I've joined somewhere that's been sold to another law firm. I'm not, I can't see my career here anymore. And yeah,
Well, it doesn't sound like you would have had the same creative space that you were hoping for, that it was going to be something new to grow and build. And as you say, it just didn't need that anymore. Um, okay. What are your reflections as you talk about your career?
I think the that security and uh, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I think when I kind of look back and think how much of my career is defined by my kind of what my upbringing was. And my dad had a he still has got a really squiggly career. And when we were young, I'd lived by the time I was 13, I'd lived in 11 different houses and been to 5 different schools because we just changed like if my dad changed his job, we moved houses, so there was this constant change. And the positives for that were I'm quite used to seeing change and experiencing change and being okay with kind of like, well, actually, I don't know what the future holds. Who knows what school I'm going to be in 2 years' time? And I feel that has carried through. But at the same time, I, that security of I just need somewhere that's secure and stable and it has a place. I could feel both those tensions from what I experienced as a kid. Those
Uh,
tensions are still, I think, here now. And if I look back at my career, I can see that I want change, but I want security, and I've ended up in a place where I think I've that's where I'm
mm,
finding that kind of balance. I think that's kind of oh, what is it that's characteristics in me and things that drive me and excite me is uncertainty, but also with a fierce feeling of responsibility for security for my
mm.
family.
Yeah. Well, and have you ever had any coaching along the way to help you understand some of your
Um, I've
career
not
choices, or always just figured it out by yourself?
not coaching per se. I mean, I've um, had kind of therapy and talked to people about kind of the
Mm.
at different times in my career, I was like, well, almost dealing with that feeling of maybe inadequacy or imposter syndrome. But I wouldn't say I've had career coaching at all. And actually, I think I probably would have benefited from it more to speak to someone who says, actually, these squiggly careers are okay. Just
Mm-hmm.
because everyone else has a defined career and looks like they're succeeding and looks like they're doing amazing and looks like X, actually, there are some people who look like they're doing amazing who are absolutely miserable. And there are other people whose careers where you think, well, that doesn't make sense, having the time of their lives. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, actually, I think I would have benefited from having a career coach to help normalize the feelings that I was having and go, that's okay. So let's make a career out of how you're feeling. And I wish I'd had that. I wish I thought about that earlier on.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. Well, yeah, because it's obviously worked for you and is working for you. So, yeah, just to take off that, I don't know, expectation or pressure that you might put on yourself to for it to be any other way. You know, everyone's career is unique to them, and if it
Mm.
works for you, that's all that matters really. I mean, it's interesting that you certainly have people along the way going, oh, but it sounds like a good job, and why don't you just carry on doing that? And what I guess what you've always just come back to how you feel.
Yeah, I think there was cynicism's the wrong word, but when I was there was a when I was teaching, people going, "Oh, it's a great job." I was like, "Yeah, but you're saying that because you've got
You're
a
not a
job, and
teacher.
yeah, exactly." And I valued people's opinions, but I learned quickly. I think I got into teaching because people said that would be a good thing, and then I was in teaching. I thought this isn't a good thing for me. I've listened to other people defining what they think my career would be good at, but I've taken that and I've not actually put myself into that conversation. And so while I've always sought other people's feedback, I've had the responsibility of, okay, you can take all the feedback, but you have to
Mm,
make the decision for you. And
yeah.
because nobody else is going to live your career for you and nobody else is going to sit in that meeting or work with those people. So take the advice, but you have to be responsible for your decision and be okay with if it's the wrong one, okay. If it's the right one, okay, but it's yours and you own it. And I think that's something I've always kind of had.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's so important, isn't it? As you say, you're the one that has to do it day in, day out. There's no point just being in your career because you think it makes other people happy
Mm.
or that they think it's a good career. Um, okay, that's been so interesting. Thank you for sharing all of that. Um, any pearls of wisdom for people listening when it comes to, well, I suppose his careers in general and what you've learned
Um,
along the way?
I think asking for help is not weakness. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's there are lots of people, especially in the legal industry, where expectations from society, from friends, from family, from your own role, um, it, it can weigh heavy where you think, well, if I ask for help, it may come across that I'm failing. And I think vulnerability and asking for help is a superpower. Um, and I think the other aspect of I think what I've learned is be comfortable being uncomfortable because that's where you really find yourself. And I think that's for me is where I found myself is I I'm uncomfortable in a good way because I don't know what the future holds, but that means I can shape it for myself.
Mm,
And it's okay to be uncomfortable, not knowing what the future is, because you do have a bit of a leeway to make your career your own. Then,
yeah. Well, it's, I think what I don't know, struggled with, but certainly over the years, it's working out the good uncomfortable versus the uncomfortable you don't really want to face. Like sometimes I get opportunities and I spend so long trying to work out that's going to make me really uncomfortable, but is that a good type of discomfort, or is that simply just a no? And it's almost just coming back to maybe, what you were saying, these sort of key themes or key values, or, is it roughly in the direction that you want to go in, and therefore, trying to sit with that discomfort because you know that it's roughly in the right direction, versus the ones where it's discomfort, but also it's just a no. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No, it absolutely does, and I think that's the people talk about the North Star. What is the guide? What are the
yeah,
values and
that's a good
things. And
word.
if
Yeah,
you're if you're generally heading in that direction about the choices you make, you're probably making the right decision. If you're heading not in that direction, then that's probably the wrong decision. So
yeah,
yeah, I think uncomfortable knowing I'm uncomfortable, but I think this is heading where I want it to be. I completely take your point and acknowledge that. I think that's the right kind of theme.
yeah. And the asking for help one, definitely. I think I've got better at that over time, but I see that in clients a lot, a sort of reluctance to inconvenience others by asking for help, and just encouraging them to give other people more credit, really, that maybe they'd be delighted to help, that they'd be supportive and open, and if they say no, they say no. Ask someone else, or that kind of thing. But there's so much that can come from asking for help versus what you seek to lose by not even trying, in a way. But yeah, as you say, sometimes there's a real vulnerability to
Mm,
it, because you're sort of saying, well, I don't know. Um, but that's okay. I love your story because there's so much curiosity in it, that you were all in that new place and none of you knew what you were doing, but there was a curiosity and a willingness to be like, well, I don't know, do you know? And then you realize how bizarre it is to feel vulnerable simply because you don't know something. It's fine. Can't expect yourself to know everything from day one. So
no,
okay, I shall stop rambling now. But thank you so much, James. I
pleasure.
really do appreciate you sharing everything. Was there anything else you wanted to add
No,
that you thought
just to
of
say,
before?
thank you. And it's been great talking with you. And I think it's only when I was kind of thinking about this that I've actually looked back and thought, oh yeah, I have been scared and I have been like terrified and I have been in a role where I was not enjoying myself, but also that has meant that I've learned from those experiences where I've been involved that I've thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I'm like really excited about what the future holds. So thank you for just giving me the opportunity to think about the
Oh,
career.
you're
So
welcome.
and talk about it with you.
Oh, you're very welcome. No, that's lovely to hear. Well, yeah, because we don't often get an opportunity just to sit back and reflect on our careers, and maybe from a slightly different perspective as well. So thank you again. And are you happy for people to maybe contact you on LinkedIn if they've got any questions? Because I do think it's quite interesting what Pinsent Masons Vario are doing, and a lot of the law firms now, being a lawyer is definitely not just that traditional path anymore. Obviously there's in-house, but now there's consultancies and almost being a freelancer. So yeah, I suppose people might have questions about that as well.
Absolutely, more than happy to for people to connect with me on LinkedIn and get in touch.
Okay, great. All right, well, enjoy the rest of your week, and thanks again. Hopefully speak soon.
Pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye bye bye.